Thanks so much for being here tonight. I want to commend you for being so vocal and unapologetic on speaking up for Palestine before it was fashionable and before the genocide. You were one of the first people in Congress to really rise up and speak truth to power in a very honest, courageous, and unfiltered way. So we all owe her a debt of gratitude for the work she's been doing for a long time, not only in recent time. So I'm gonna kind of conduct this like a podcast interview to make it more natural than boring Q&A slash It feels like an interrogation with those lights. Those lights are hella bright, but we'll try to make it work. But I want to lead off by kind of getting to know you a bit more on a personal level and understanding where it is you come from, and tell us a bit about how the place that made you shaped you into the fighter that you are today.
I usually don't get that question, but thank you for that. Good evening, you all. Assalamu alaikum. It is such an honor to be here, and I'm so glad that I was asked to be here. Thank you to Abed and to Lar and to so many of you that just took the time to reach out and to make sure that I made it here today. And shout out to the folks that just gave me this scarf back at the gave me my keffiyeh scarf. So many people don't know I grew up in a political household. My father went into politics when I was about 10 years old, and he started out just PTA dad, and he was flipping tables over in PTA. And he decided, someone told him, well, you know what, you need to get out of the school and go run for office. And so that's kind of how we started. But I grew up in a home where my father, he was very much so focused on me understanding, me and my siblings, that it's okay to be Black. And for me, it's okay to be a dark-skinned Black girl. Because at the time, it was just, it's not great now, but it was worse, 40 plus years ago. And so he instilled that in us. And on our walls in our home, we had like big posters, the great kings and queens of Africa, and Rosa Parks and Dr. King. And he taught us about our history. He taught us about the transatlantic slave trade. He taught us, he wanted us to know, he said, if you go out there and they never teach you, I want you to know where you come from and who you are. Because our culture was stolen. I am the descendant of enslaved Africans in this country on both sides of my family. And so I have no clue what our culture is. And so that informs, the things that I do now, because now I can look to, my Palestinian family and say, I need you to keep your land. I need you to keep your culture. I need you to be connected to it, because I know what it's like to not be connected to mine. And so that's my start. My start was my father making sure that I understood my own culture as much as he could teach me. And then he also taught me, though, that injustice is everywhere, and it will continue if you don't lead. He taught me that from 5 years old. And so I was 10 years old when I worked my very first campaign. And literally, my dad would have me walking up to the door to canvass, and I would have the paper. He would stand at the sidewalk. I would go knock on the door, and they would open the door. Oh, hi, little girl. And I would say, vote for my dad. And they would say, where is your dad? And not back there. And he won. And so I've worked campaigns pretty much every 2 years since then, until I started running myself.
And you're from St. Louis, right? St. Louis has a lot,
yes,
in common with Detroit, where I'm from. Deeply segregated city.
Yes.
A city with deeply rooted racial injustice issues.
Yes.
Sort of a center of civil rights movements and civil rights progress. What issues at a young age, what political issues specifically, mobilized you and sort of like crystallized in your head that I want to become political?
You know, it's funny because I fought what you just said. Like, I didn't want to have anything to do with, uh, you know, anything my dad was a part of, really. You know, it was because it was, I think it's daddy daughter to the park and daddy daughter to the, I don't know, circus or what, things like that, daddy daughter to the zoo. I didn't have that. It was daddy daughter to the campaign function, daddy daughter to the banquet, daddy daughter to the council meeting. And so I didn't want to be connected to it, but I sat and I listened. I was in the room with the governor and in the room with state reps and mayors. That was our everyday. They were in my kitchen, in my living room. And I just wanted them to go home so I could watch TV, so I could talk on the phone. You had the landline and they were in the kitchen where the phone was. So I had no connection, zero. And I remember when I turned 18, I told my dad, I said, I will never go into politics like you. I will never do it. And I meant it with my soul, I thought. But I said that because my dad was such a great person and he gave so much of his heart and soul to the community, and the attacks against him were tremendous. And I wondered, why do you keep doing this if you get so much hatred? And at one point, there was someone running against him that just was lying continuously on him. And I stood up in the debate. My dad said, you stand in the back of the room. Don't you say a word. You have to be here, but in the back. And the room was about as big as this one, but it was the long way. So I'm in the back, and the last lie, I just couldn't sit. Like, I'm someone, disrespect is where the Lord is still working on me. He's still working on me when it comes to disrespect. And so he was disrespecting my father. And so the last lie, I just couldn't take it anymore. So I stood up at 18 and I yelled, "You're a liar! You're a liar! Sit down, shut up, talking to my dad." And they ended the debate, and that was over. So that's when I told my dad I'll never go into politics. But what I didn't realize was that was when I was getting my chops, starting to speak up. I saw my dad speak up. I saw my dad give his heart to the community. I saw my dad help each and every person, one person at a time. Like, he would help. If someone asked for help, my dad would go help them. He would go to their home and help their brother, their mother, whoever. He helped the entire family, one person at a time, before he moved on to the next. And so I learned that was my example. And so now, when I look back, it was those seeds that were sown that now have blossomed into who I am today.
And I'm sure having like a powerful black male political archetype at home had to be really inspiring. So I want to go like a decade from today and think about when St. Louis and Ferguson specifically was the center of the civil rights sort of universe.
Yeah.
With the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, the murder of Mike Brown.
Yes.
And there's so many parallels with that moment, right? That we see with what's happening right now with the suppression of free speech, assembly, organizing, and political dissent. So this is a two-part question. The first part is, how did that moment, galvanize you to become not only a congresswoman, but to become a political advocate? And second, what are the most salient, parallels you see with what happened then and with what's happening right now today?
Well, like you said earlier, St. Louis just was such a segregated city, a segregated community. And I was living in this like black girl bubble where I was trying to just take care of my kids and, keep a roof over our heads and try to keep my kids from becoming the next hashtag, killed by police. That was, first my worry was not my kid being kidnapped or a car accident or, my first worry as a mother was always that the police would kill my kid. St. Louis was, for year after year, #1 for police murder. And that was predominantly black children, black people. And so that was my worry. So when Michael Brown was killed, I I took to the streets to protest. Initially, I was like, I'm a pastor, I'm a nurse, I'll go to the street, I'll, help bandage wounds, I'll pray with people. That's what I thought. And then it turned into me becoming this protester. I had seen it, I had protested with my dad many, many times as a child, but this time my dad wasn't there. And I just felt this connection to just be there, be a presence, show up. I didn't really know what to do. And I just kept going back. I even told my boss, like, hey, let's put a grief van out on the ground during the protest to help people who were suffering from, who saw Mike Brown's body laying in the middle of the street, in the middle of this apartment complex, uncovered for 4 hours on that ground in the almost 100-degree St. Louis sun, 4.5 hours, and people just watched this body there for 4 hours. So I wanted to provide help to the community, and also help people who were being tear gassed. So we did that. But I'll never forget one day when things changed for me. It was a few days after he was killed, and some of you have heard me tell this story. I was walking near where Michael Brown's body had laid, and I saw this group of people sitting in the grass. And I walked over to see who they were and what were they doing. It was a group of Palestinians who came to the United States, to Missouri, to St. Louis, to Ferguson, to teach us about what to do when you're tear gassed. And they were just sitting in the grass talking to a group of mostly Black people, Black young people, teaching us and taught us how to put on gas masks, taught us about the tear gas. At that time, the internet wasn't this information highway we have now. And so we were pouring water on ourselves and burning. And at one point I asked them why. Like, why are you risking yourselves for us, for people you don't know, in a country where this isn't your country? And they said, because we understand oppression. We understand state-sanctioned violence, and we don't want what happens to us in our country to happen to you and yours. And I never forgot that. So on the street at night, when the protests would get really, really, really horrible, some really traumatic nights, our Palestinian American community, even when that delegation went back home, our Palestinian American community, our Arab community, our Muslim community were out there on the ground with us. And when night fell, they didn't leave like a lot of people did. They stayed with us. Locked arms with our AAPI community, some of our Jewish community members, so many others. Like everybody was, so many people from all walks of life were out there together. And it taught me something. It taught me that this community that was in all of these silos, this community that was so segregated, now had just came together in this, out of trauma, but came together and decided we're going to be one St. Louis, we're going to be one community, and we're going to fight for the humanity of Black people. And they didn't have to. And so another day while I was out there was this young Black boy. He had to be about 16 years old. And we were in a line. We were right at the police lineup. And we were just chanting. And this young boy was saying, now the police were in full riot gear. They had the shields, the batons, the mask, everything. And this boy is just chanting FTP, I won't say the rest of it, but he's just chanting it, and he isn't touching the officer or anything, just chanting. The officer got so angry with just the words that all of a sudden, and I'm standing next to him, and there's this short white woman. I'm short too, but she's shorter than me. She's standing on the other side of him, And all of a sudden, this officer picks up his baton and brings it down as if he's going to crack the young boy over his head. And all I remember is was this white woman's hand. She caught the baton in the air before it hit the boy. And the police officer I was stunned. I was like, we are all about to get. But the police officer was so stunned that he just froze. And he looked at her and she said, "No, you will not." And the officer retreated. He took back his baton and he left. And
that's like a reverse Karen.
There's a reverse Karen, yeah. Yeah. But what I learned, from those two instances, I learned that people who are not oppressed or burdened the same way you are in a situation should be those who stand up for people who are in theirs. And I always said that I would pay it forward. So I continued to organize with our Arab community from that point on for the next, so all the way, we never stopped organizing together. We never stopped working together. And so when I went to Congress, I ran on it. I ran on a free Palestine. I ran on ending the siege. I ran on it. But just thinking about, what we saw then, what we're seeing now, when there is no resistance, then the hate, the oppression, the struggle gets to continue, and it can grow. And so when we knew that there was going to be a ground invasion in Rafah in October of 2023, and I remember being that protester out on the streets of Ferguson. They called me Mama Cori or Pastor Cori. And I remember what I used to do then when a baton was coming down on someone or they were about to be maced in their face or something, I would jump on people. I would always just jump and try to protect them, even though I know, I could get hit. But that was just my instinct. And so when that happened, I remember thinking, how do I do this to the people? How do I do this for Palestinians in Gaza? I couldn't figure out how. And the only power I felt like I had was the pen, to be able to put forth legislation and to work with my sister Rashida Tlaib, my dear friend, my love, my heart. Because I couldn't understand, how could we expect her to be the one leading on legislation to save her own people while she's oppressed and while she is burdened? And I said, you know what? Because they stood up for us then, it's time for me to stand up for them now and put myself on the line the same way they put themselves on the line for me and for my people. And so we look at how back then, what is happening right now, this didn't just start the displacement of Palestinians. This isn't the first time. The bombings, this isn't the first time. We can look at, time after time, since 1948. We can look at different instances where, where Palestinians have been harmed and hurt and came back, been so resilient. But we also can look at those same times where the United States was complicit or helped or was, and so that's what we're seeing now. So that parallel, I feel, is that the United States just is digging into this is who we are. And so we are going to dig in to know this is not who we are. We are the people. We are the people of the United States. And so we say no. And so as long as we say no, you can't continue to send money to go and bomb the people of Gaza. You can't send money to go and send weapons so that the people of the West Bank lose their homes.
Yep. And, it's important to note that the same, militarization of the policing that we saw in Ferguson and St. Louis was the very same weaponry that we see in Gaza right now. So the parallels are many.
They were accredited. The St. Louis Police Department, they went to Israel and were accredited by their,
I want to ask you about what's happening right now in real time with this quote-unquote peace colonial plan. But before we get there, I want to talk about, your transition from, Missouri, which is the Midwest, blue collar, down to earth, and going to Washington, which is a radically different place. I mean, you were in the belly of the beast, right? In Congress. How was that shift, but specifically, how was it navigating that shift in you maintaining this sort of, courageous, unfiltered, unfettered voice, not only on, anti-Black racism, civil rights issues, but specifically on Palestine?
Because it's the reason I went to Congress. It's the reason I wanted to go, because I was wondering, who speaks up for us? How do we get the change that we seek if the people who I've seen, the courage, the moxie, the grit that I understand that brings forth change, if that's missing in these seats? And so I wanted to go to Congress because I remember being unhoused, living in a car with my 2 babies, waking up every 2 hours in the middle of the night, hoping that I didn't find one of them dead because it was it just got too cold in the car overnight. I remember what it was like to feed my children and not feed myself for 2 or 3 days at a time. I remember what it was like to almost lose my life to an abusive partner who choked me and choked me unconscious and left me for dead. I remember being shot at and my car being shot up just because I was speaking out, and that happened multiple times, being ran off the road. I remember all the death attempts on my life. And how do people get out of that? I remember I lost so many of my friends to gun violence. So many of them, I know at least 30 in 3 years. And how do we get out of that cycle? How do we see that change if people who have not experienced those hardships aren't in positions to speak to it? Not that you can't advocate if you haven't, but those who can, those who have been there, have to be in these seats. And so that's why I wanted to go. I didn't care about a name or a title. I don't care about fame. I don't care about any of that. I care that my people get what they deserve, that they get what they need, that they are taken care of, that they are not only surviving St. Louis, that they thrive. I care about making sure that if I could save one life. So during Ferguson, we said if we could save one life, we did our job. And so I think about that now. If we saved one life in Gaza, if we saved one, if Rashida and I would have waited 4 more months for the world to feel like, maybe you can say genocide now, maybe you can call for a ceasefire. If we would have waited, how many more lives, would that have, how many more lives would it have been by that point, 20,000 or 30,000, or would it have been 100,000, at that point? So it is about using what you have now, because what you don't use, that harm your, if you have this gift, if you have this talent, if you have this skill, or you even just have the heart for something and you choose not to do it out of fear, out of status, then your children's children get to live out what you didn't do. And I'm not going to be the one to allow that. Why are we here right now in this time? Right here. Why are we here with what we have, with what we know, if we won't use that to better humanity, if we won't speak to the issues? And so if there was a legislator in another country who had the opportunity to make a decision whether the people of St. Louis were going to get bombed, whether there was going to be a genocide, whether there was going to be an apartheid, an infanticide, an androcide, a femicide, an extermination, an annihilation of a whole people, if there was a legislator that could make that decision in another country, I would want them to put everything on the line to do it, to make sure that my people were whole. And so that is what I had to do. And if I had to do it again, knowing that AIPAC was going to come for me and snatch the seat from me, They took a title from me. They didn't take my heart, my mouth. They didn't take my will. So I would do it all over again.
And inshallah, she'll do it all again. But look, it's all of our responsibilities here in this room and beyond to support Cori, because you're running again for office, inshallah. So, so write 2 checks tonight, one to ADC and one for Cori's future campaign, inshallah. I want to ask you I feel like asking a light question because things got really thick and deep, but I want to jump into sort of like, a deep question a bit, but let's sprinkle a soft question right now. Who's your favorite artist or musician? I got to segue to the hard question in a bit.
You got to give me a genre, because I'm not
good music supersedes
So
genres,
let me just say, if you ask me my favorite, just period, my favorite band is going to be New Edition. I'm sorry, I'm an R&B girl. I'm an R&B girl. Yeah. But if you ask me I don't know, you just have favorites in areas.
Got you. Okay. I was more of a Tony person, but
Tony is good.
Okay, I set that up because I'm asking a tough question right now. How did you feel when colleagues of yours that you were closely politically aligned with weren't using the language of genocide? I'm not going to say names, but you know what I'm talking about.
I wasn't surprised, though. That's the thing. Let me be clear. I was not at all surprised, because some of us go so hard in the paint. I mean, we go so hard that we have to, let me say this. There are some days where Rashida and I, our offices would have to be one office, because that's just how bad the vote was. And so we needed that much support. Our staff needed that much support. So like the media, or there was a protest or something at one of our offices, so we were working out of the other. And so I didn't expect too many of our colleagues to even want to say genocide for quite a while. It was hard, though, because we were isolated. Like the way that they ice you out, and not only ice you out like, I'm not going to talk to her, I'm not going to sit by her. No, I don't mean just that. I mean, you find out that there was something you were supposed to be at, and nobody told you, or now this bill that was moving forward, you find out that they took the bill from you, and now somebody else is going to introduce it. And it was yours. It's just like all kinds of things. And when it's your team, like I can understand the other team, not wanting to engage, but when it's your team, you're like, you're my people, though. Like you're who I'm supposed to be able to lean on in these times. Like we're all we got. So it was hard, and there were many crying days. There were many days where I just bawled, where my staff cried. I remember the day that we introduced the ceasefire resolution, October 16th, 2023, the death threats were so tremendous. Now, I've had threats all for years, for 10 years. But this one day, in 24 hours, there were so many horrible death threats, not just, I want you dead, but like graphic, that I had to evacuate my St. Louis office and shut it down for a full week, because I was afraid of what would happen to my staff. The people thinking I'm in the office and they do something to my staff. And so to know that we were going through all of that, and we were left on an island where it's like, you're my team, we should be on this island together. But again, we weren't surprised. We weren't.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking, though, and disappointing on many fronts, right? Because we supported these people for many, many years. So, we're at a moment right now where we've gone through 2 years of genocide, right? It's been the most well-documented genocide. Some have called it the first digital genocide. We've seen what's happened in Gaza on a real-time rolling basis, on a daily basis, right? So as soon as bombs hit buildings, we see it minutes later.
Yes.
As soon as families are torn apart, we see it seconds later. How has the genocide in Gaza changed you, both personally but politically as well?
I am utterly ashamed of this country. I am. And it's because it was 2023, 2024, 2025, because the government of this country knows exactly what it's doing. It's not like we were silent. They were trying to silence us. I'm ashamed, but it made me think about how, because people would say, oh, well, we wish black people would stop talking about the chattel slavery. It's over with. It happened such a long time ago. Get over it. And they would say, that there were good people during slavery. But if you saw families being separated and put on auction blocks, in chains, people being whipped, and all of the horrible things that happened, and you said nothing. You didn't fight against it when it was not happening to you, and you didn't speak up. Those folks didn't speak up. That's why slavery went on for so many generations. That's why I'm not 100% African, because my ancestors were raped. So I'm sorry I said that R word in here, if that triggered anyone. And so when people say there were good people, right now, for those who feel like they are good people, how? How are you good people? When you're witnessing it, you can't say you didn't know it. Like you said, it's a digital genocide going on. We know it, we see it, we hear it, it's in our faces, we scroll past it. Every single day, all day, the numbers grow every single day. The images change every single day. Today, we're talking about journalists. Tomorrow, we're talking about first responders. The next day, we're talking about children. We're back to first responders. We're back to children. Then we got moms. Then we have hospitals. We got surgeons. We got every day. It's over and over, more and more. We see Gaza looking like a friggin' parking lot. We hear what's happening in West Bank. We hear of these folks going in, laughing, taking whole family homes. We know whole generations, whole legacies of people have been wiped off the face of the earth and will not exist anymore. How can you call yourself a good person and you won't say anything? You won't do anything. You won't stand up. You won't put yourself on the line. Because people said to me, Cori, why? This was during the last election. Cori, you champion housing justice. You champion women's rights. You champion policing and champion this and champion that. You're going to sacrifice yourself for this one issue when you were helping so many people in all of these areas. Don't you understand what's going to happen if you do that? And I said to them, I can work on houselessness from out there. I can work on any of those issues. None of that will stop. And I said, but the one thing I do know is that 10,000 people will not die of homelessness. As much as we need to work on, they won't die in a few days. But what's happening in Gaza, they will. And so I don't have to worry about bombs dropping on me and my family today, so I have to worry about the bombs dropping on other people's family today.
Well, in a world where we got too many Van Joneses, alhamdulillah, we got Cori Bush. We're at this sort of juncture now where this administration, the Trump administration, has, introduced this quote unquote peace deal. I wanted to get your thoughts on that. What do you think of this deal? Are you optimistic? Are you hopeful?
Okay, we've been here before and before and before and before, but I will not lose hope. I will not lose hope because when I see the videos of the children, I saw the video of the little girl holding the cat the other day. When I see these videos of people who are actually living this, who have hope, so then I have to have hope. If they are living it, then I have to. I can't speak death and doom and destruction while they are trying to hold on to life and hope. So that's how I look at this. But do I believe that these folks are going to do what they said? No. But do I believe that they can? Yes. Is this all that we need? No. No. How are we making sure that the displacement that they actually want to happen doesn't happen? How are we going to, is bombing going to start right back in another 7 days? Was this really a cessation of bombing? You know, Trump did not get his Nobel Peace Prize. And he changed.
He really thought he was going to win.
He did. He did. He really did. But you know, more nominations go in somewhere around January. So I'm not. So let's not think that he won't try again. He changed the Department of Defense to the Department of War, but then made a Board of Peace. So he's so all over the place, and so my point is,
confused white man, right?
He's having a moment that he claimed Biden was having. So I am hopeful because Palestinians who are living this out have some hope, but we can't take our foot off of their necks. We can't stop and think that this is over. We have to continue to push the entire, not the country, the world, to truly see the humanity of Palestinians and to truly have. We don't want symbols. We don't want people to just say yes, statehood, and then there is no what does that actually mean? So there actually has to be true diplomacy that will bring about the self-determination and a free Palestine. So until that happens, we still have so much more work to do.
I got another tough one, but I feel like I should ask an easy one before I ask this one. Now, let me just jump into it. How are we on time? Are we good? Good? Okay. I could talk to you all night, Cori. Okay. Let me ask you this. How do you feel about, these, America First, far-right people changing their tune on Palestine and being, very vocally critical of Israel? Does that sort of, give you any hope now that you're transitioning to Washington? We're going to send her back to Washington, right, everybody? So you're going back there. When you see the likes of, Marjorie Taylor Greene and, Tucker Carlson, these right-wing voices, speaking in a way that we're not used to, how do you take to that?
So it is helpful, I will say, that they are speaking up, especially when it's coming from inside the Congress, because everybody was able to attack us and be against us, everybody. So having people on the other side of the aisle that are in some way saying a similar thing cuts down on the way that the media can attack us. And remember, the media is really, really important, because shout out to the integrious journalists in the room, because the media, it's all about perception. And so if all people hear is that we are they call us terrorists, they say that we're divisive and all of these things, but if it's coming from both sides, then that actually does help. But I will say this, some of us are saying the similar things, but for different reasons. And so we have to be careful about that. So we can applaud, thank you for caring about the people of Gaza. Thank you for caring about the children. Absolutely. But the thing is this, if that same person is okay with babies who are being carried by their parents to the United States through the Rio Grande seeking asylum, and it's okay that that family dies in that water. If they're okay with that, then that's not somebody who's on our team. If this person is okay with black people being killed with impunity by the police in this country, then person is still not okay. If that person if that same person who says don't harm children in Gaza, but if right here in this country, if they saw a girl put on a hijab for the first time, and they yell at the mother saying, why do you have her wearing a hijab? So we need to question that person. So it can't just be that this one part of the issue, this one part of humanity that they are like, yes. Because what is the heart of it? The heart of it is different than our heart. Our heart is humanity. Our heart is peace. Our heart is a love for each and every person. Our heart is different than what theirs is. It stems from a different place. And so what we won't allow people to do is separate us and break apart the work that we've tried so hard to build and the connections that we've tried to build. If you don't like black folks, then don't come at me speaking your love for Palestinians. If you don't like Arabs, don't come at me talking about your love for black folks. If you don't like our Asian community, if that's what I just want to be clear about. And so as we move forward, let's pay attention to that. So it's okay to call the office and say, thank you for standing up for Palestine. Absolutely. But is that somebody you want to give your money to? Because remember, if you give your money to that person, what you're saying is, I want you to stay in this seat and I want you to continue your work.
Okay, I'm going to ask one last question. I think we'll have time for maybe one or two questions from the audience before we transition. So the last question I have for you is, so, we're in a room of primarily Arab Americans here today. The ADC has convened tonight's remembrance of Alex Odeh, a giant in our community. What message do you have specifically for young Arab Americans today that are trying to navigate this new world, right? To be vocal, to be, courageous and emulate people like you at a time where their identity and their political voices are being hyper-policed, right? And the second part to that question is, you've spoken so powerfully for our community. Now that you're, vying for Congress again, how can we be part of your movement and be part of your campaign moving forward? Specifically, I want you to speak specifically on what we can do to help, mobilize your campaign and better your campaign.
So one thing that I learned about Alex and to his family, I pray that you get accountability. I know justice would truly be him being here today, and you would give everything to not have this honor, this memorial banquet. You would just rather have him with you. But thank you to ACD for continuing this legacy and continue to push this forward for ADC. But one thing I learned about him was that he knew about the attacks and he knew about the threats, and he didn't let it stop him. He didn't let it silence him, and he didn't let it change his heart. I read that he stayed just this gentle, humble person. He didn't turn into this mean, angry person, because sometimes that happens when hatred comes your way so much, you can get bitter. And so for our young Arab community, for our kids, our teens, our young adults, don't get bitter. Keep a clean heart. Because when you have a clean heart, you can see further. And when you can see further, you can see the enemy coming, but you can also see yourself, and you can see, who am I and what do I bring to this moment? How do I grow who I am and what I'm supposed to be? What is my purpose? And I think each and every one of us have to ask that question. What is my purpose in this moment? Because you could have been born, 140 years ago. You could have been born 140 years from now. Why are you here right now? What is it about you? And if you think about yourself, if you just be selfish for a moment and just think about you. I know it's hard, I know. But think about yourself for just a moment and think about what makes you amazing. What makes you amazing? Some of you speak well. Some of you excellent cooks. Some of you are great attorneys. All of these different things. Some of you are great nurturers. What is it that makes you great? That thing the earth needs right now. So how does the earth receive it unless you're giving it away? And how do you do that? There is somebody right now that is missing out on something simply because the person that was supposed to deliver it felt inferior or felt like it's not my time. Somebody's going to talk about me, or I'm not old enough. I don't have enough money. My kids, they're too young. There are people in this room that probably should have been running for office. People have said you should run for office, and then no, I got to go back to school, or no, this or that. And so now you have this jerk in the seat. I'm being real. Yeah, right. I'm putting it nicely, right. And I mean, it's that simple. If we don't step up into who we are and become who we are, and if we don't allow our children to be who they are, if we don't push that, but I bet your daughter, just your daughter, right? She's who I was, daddy, daughter to the banquet. I told you. But you look happier than me, I'm telling you. But the seeds that you are sowing in her, she will grow up to become so much more than she would have been had she just, been at home doing other things. So to each and every person in this room, your greatness was great 30 minutes before you walked in this room tonight. It was great. I applaud you. Thank you for all of your work and everything that you've done. But right now, since you asked the question, and since I'm on this platform, now what I have to deliver is a message to you. That was for then. That was for then in that moment. Now we all have a responsibility to step up. I don't care if you're 97 and a half or if you're 7 and a half. You have something to give to this moment that somebody else does not. And you know it because you know people. You think about, I could do that better than her. I could do that better than, or I could do it if I would have been in that position. I would have done this. You're right if you would have, but. So bring it. Bring it, because the people of Gaza need that right now. And not only the people who are there right now, what happens to those babies who've been born since? What happens to this 7-year-old who suffered from white phosphorus falling around them, and they don't even know right now what that outcome is going to look like in 10 years? What about those who are now living in this country and they have the trauma of what they lived through? What about those of you who experienced the Nakba, the first one? And what you know, and how can you give that to us? Can you give that to us so that we can then take that message and go out and help? Everybody has a part. So if you've told our elders that they don't, they do. If you told our kids they don't, they do. Everybody take stock. Now is your moment. Say, now is my moment. And say, now is my moment. There is so much more for you. Point to the people at your table. Do like this and say, it's so much more for you. It's so much more. Speaking it makes it real. Speaking it makes it real. And so now when you walk out, what we just did was we just dropped some seeds that I am speaking right now need to come to fruition. They need to grow and blossom quickly, because the people need us right now, because the people of Sudan need you right now. The people of Congo need you right now. People are hurting in Lebanon. People are hurting in Syria. People are hurting in Yemen. People are hurting in Pakistan. So I'm going to stop there, because I think you got it.
I want to give a shout out to Norway, who beat Israel 5-0 today. But I don't think I'm going to be a good Arab and try to be as punctual as possible and close when we're supposed to close. I want to close by saying this, though. We owe, again, I'm going to echo what I said earlier, we owe a debt of gratitude for you really stepping up at a time when it was untimely, when it was dangerous for you politically. And in the same way that you covered those Palestinians in Ferguson, it is all of our responsibility moving ahead to cover the next Congresswoman out of Missouri, right? And make sure that we more than cover, but to donate, but to be engaged and be invested in her campaign coming up. It's going to be a tough campaign, so we have to make sure that she wins, inshallah, and represents us even more powerfully when she gets to Washington. Thank you so much. Another round of applause.